look at the diplomatic challenges to end the war. We are joined now by former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us. In the past 24 hours, we've seen Russia carry out several attacks across Ukraine after pledging to de-escalate military operations at peace talks in Turkey yesterday. As a diplomat, how do you handle these seemingly bad faith statements from Russia, and how does it impact these negotiations going forward?
So, Lindsey, you're right, and your reporter's right, and the Ukrainian people are right. You can't trust anything that the Russians say, and when they say they're pulling back and then continuing to attack, that's just a demonstration of why you can't trust them. That said, these discussions in Turkey, or that have been going on now for a couple of weeks between Russians and Ukrainians, may be setting the stage. They may be doing some groundwork, some homework for the time when President Putin decides he's ready to negotiate. And as you also just reported, President Putin may not have the full story. He may not understand, as your reporter said, how badly it's going on the ground. He may not understand. He may not understand how badly his economy is being hammered. And if that's true, if he still thinks that the military is doing pretty well and the economy is not being hurt, soldiers are not being killed. The Ukrainians say that there are about 17,000 Russian soldiers killed. If he's not getting this, if he doesn't understand that, then he's not ready to go negotiate. So all of this homework that his diplomats are doing, and some not so diplomats, their delegation, Lindsey, is being led by a former minister of culture. There's some exchanges of ideas going on between the Russians and Ukrainians, and that may pay off when President Putin finally figures out it's not going so well for him.
But to that point, if he's not being given accurate information, then how can you even continue on with negotiations?
So you can continue on because they are separated. They are disconnected from him in several ways. I mean, both by information, but also by a different perception. So the diplomats, or those people trying to do these negotiations, are looking to see what the Ukrainians have in mind. Again, the Ukrainian delegation there that you can see right there, that's the Ukrainian delegation. They've made some proposals. They've had some discussions. I'm prepared to believe that they've had some discussions with those Russians, and they've gotten some feedback about what might work. However, the disconnect is exactly what you're saying, Lindsey. There's a disconnect between what's going on in these negotiations and President Putin. He has to decide. He has to realize it's going badly, and then maybe he will take advantage of what they've already had some conversations about in Istanbul.
And today, a Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson said that there were no limits on Russia and China's cooperation. What kind of challenge does that stance pose right now for ending the war, especially considering that President Biden has repeatedly warned China about coming to Russia's aid in Ukraine?
The Chinese are in a difficult situation. Yes, they have said that there's no limits on their relationship and on their partnership. However, for the Chinese, this is difficult. The Russians are not that big an economy, not very big economy at all. Whereas Europe is a very large economy, and they do a lot. The Chinese do a lot of trade with the Europeans, and not so much with the Russians. So they have to walk a fine line. The Chinese, they have to walk a fine line, and they can't be too close. They can't be too close to the Russians. And my bet is there's a little bit of buyer's remorse. We remember that President Putin was in Beijing just before the Olympics, and that's where they first started talking about no limits to their work together. And I imagine the Chinese wish there were some limits on that, because the Russians are now a pariah, and they don't want to be stuck with a pariah.
Kind of a two-part question here. President Biden spoke with President Zelensky today for nearly an hour, promising $500 million in direct aid and other support, as you know. If you were advising the president, what would you be telling him that the U.S. needs to do right now in order to help Ukraine be able to eventually end this war on terms that it finds acceptable? I mean, that's really the first part. And the other part, you know, when we were there and talking with Ukrainians, they said that they didn't feel that it should be a non-starter, basically, for them to say, we will never join NATO. They don't want that as part of the negotiation. Do you agree?
So on the first part of your question, what should we be doing? What should President Biden be doing? We should be opening the spigot as broadly on weapons. We need to support the Ukrainians. They're fighting our war, Linsey. They're fighting against the Russians, and the Russians are fighting first against the Ukrainians, but then against the West, and including us. So we need to provide them, the Ukrainians, with as much of the weapons as we can out of our stocks, out of other nations' stocks. We need to provide them all these missiles that we've been talking about, anti-air, anti-tank, and armored personnel carriers. These are the kinds of things that we need to do. Open that spigot wide. And the second thing is keep the sanctions on. Put more sanctions on. There are still banks, Russian banks, that are not cut off from SWIFT. That can certainly happen. So there is that. Then the question about the U.S.-Russian and U.S.-Ukrainian relationship, this is going to be, we're going to see how this develops. We're going to see how this develops. But we need to support the Ukrainians in their fight as they go forward.
Former Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, thank you so much for your time and insight as always.
Thanks, Linsey.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.